Welcome to Moments with Marianne. Allow me to interrupt your train of thought with something that may be one of the most interesting things you hear today. This is Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest Bailey Gaddis, and she's here to share with us her new book, Asking for a Pregnant Friend, 101 Answers to Questions Women Are Too Embarrassed to Ask About Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Motherhood. So let's welcome to the show, Bailey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You know, it's always such a joy to spend time with you and to talk about your books. I was actually really blown away kind of hearing that, here we are, 2021, and women are still having a tough time asking questions about pregnancy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like we've come a really long way, which is great, but there are still so many questions that women are embarrassed by, and so much of that comes from our culture making a lot of these topics taboo. So I still get so many questions, whispered in my childbirth prep classes about all sorts of stuff that I can tell women are feeling so much shame around. So it's unfortunate, but I'm hoping this book can help to provide, really quality information and reduce that shame.
Well, and I know that you're a doula as well, which, you're really immersed in this whole practice of helping women not only just know their bodies, but work through the pregnancy process. What are some of the questions that you get that are kind of the most common?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest topics is the emotions that come up during pregnancy. It's like I get emails every week with women reaching out saying, I am so irritable. I cannot stand my partner, and sometimes it's just little irritants, but sometimes, women are really worried about this and they feel like, should I separate from my partner? What's going on? And, so often it's our hormones taking over. Sometimes it is a signifier of something bigger, so those emotions can be a really big thing. And then of course, after women have the baby, there is postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum OCD. There's a lot of things that we don't realize can even happen. Postpartum depression, luckily, is talked about more and more, but there's so many facets of that emotional journey in the first, year of the baby's life that can really throw women for a loop and make them feel like there must be something wrong with me. So I really try to support with that, because it's a scary can be a scary phenomenon to have really intense new emotions come up.
Well, and especially when you don't really feel like you have anyone you can ask. That's got to be so difficult. And I was just blown away to see that there's so much, like, women are carrying so much shame. Let's say they're hoping for, one sex of a baby and they end up with a different gender. How do you talk with women about that?
Yeah, well, luckily I have a lot of personal experience with that one. When I was pregnant with my son 8 years ago, I was convinced that he was going to be a girl, and I built all these expectations about what that would look like, about, how I would parent a girl. And then at 20 weeks, when I found out that he was not a girl, I felt devastated. I had about 3 days where I went through mourning. And then of course I felt really guilty, which as we do, guilty that I wasn't just grateful that he was a healthy baby. So I worked through that. I realized that I'm having the child I'm meant to have, and that, it really doesn't make a difference if the child is male or female. You're really not going to parent them any different. So, that's what I tell women that face that same challenge, and, to not beat yourself up about feeling guilty. It is normal to have a hope for one, sex or another. So to just let yourself feel those emotions. And then on the other side of it, know that, again, you're having the baby you're meant to have, and you will love them so much once they're in your arms.
And if you've already painted the room pink, it's okay. You can paint it blue, right?
Exactly, exactly.
All those things can be fixed. And I know, ma'am, women go through so much after having a baby, just through the birthing process and all of that. And they're, you were talking about hormones raging. What if they, or one of the fears like, hey, I'm going to have my child and not really connect.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a big one, because we always hear, oh yeah, the moment the baby is in your arms, you'll feel this unconditional love and it'll just change your life. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes you do have that instant bond, but it can be so incredibly normal for you to need some time to build up that bond, and of course, women freak out if they get the baby in their arms and they don't feel that instant connection. Sometimes they even feel some resentment in those early days towards the baby because they're no longer sleeping, and there's a lot going on. And again, going back to what I said, before, with women taking this as a sign that, oh, I must be a bad mom, I must be a horrible person. But none of that is the case. Our back to the hormones, they're to blame for so much of this, but our hormones are wonky after we have that baby, and they can make it harder in some cases to bond with the baby. Sometimes they're on our side, oxytocin, the love hormone that helps us bond, but sometimes those oxytocin levels don't rise, and it takes time. So I really want to remind women that even if they are somebody that doesn't feel that immediate bond, they don't immediately just love motherhood, that is okay. And that bond will develop with time. But of course, if somebody really feels like they can't care for the baby, like they are severely depressed, obviously it is the best thing to reach out to your care provider and just let them know how you're feeling.
Do you ever get women that say, you know what, I feel like just running away from all of this?
Oh, yes. I have been that woman from time to time. It's overwhelming. It is overwhelming having a new baby. As the children grow, it can still be really overwhelming. And especially when our role as a mother is coupled with our role as a partner, as a friend, as a daughter, as somebody that has to work. There is a lot on our plate, and sometimes it can lead to that desire of just taking off for a while. And I tell women, it's like, if you have that desire, it likely does not mean you want to abandon your family. It probably just means you want to go to a hotel for an afternoon and sleep without anybody bugging you. So don't feel bad if you have that desire. Of course, if you really are feeling like you are drowning in motherhood, again, seek additional support. But a lot of times it's just so normal to feel like, I would like to run away today. I would like to go to the beach by myself.
I think all of us feel that way one day or another, right? So,
Exactly.
kids or no kids,
Right, exactly.
Well, and I mean, women just carry such a heavy load nowadays with work and children, and there's just so much that's on their plate. What are some of the common fears they tell you about their relationships, as they're trying to juggle everything?
Yeah, well, one that really surprised me specifically, from pregnant women is, I'm afraid that my partner is going to stray when I'm pregnant. And, when I first got that question, I would always think, oh, that's not going to happen. That's not something that happens during pregnancy. But then when I was writing the book, I started to research this question, and I was really shocked to find that research has shown that about 10% of partners do stray when their partner is pregnant. And I looked deeper into that, and the two primary reasons found were that, number one, women physically probably aren't feeling great, in different phases of pregnancy. And so sometimes, physically they cannot, show up for their partner in the same way that they used to. And so sometimes that can lead to that infidelity. And then on, looking at it from an emotional standpoint, women are dealing with a lot of fear, anxiety, a lot of different things that can come up during pregnancy. So they don't have a lot of space to support their partner in some cases with their emotional needs. So sometimes that can cause the infidelity. But of course, I tell women, you're not a statistic. Just because this is something that happens does not mean that that is going to unfold, in your partnership. But of course, communication is key, so to just let your partner know how you're feeling and work through it together. I'm 29 weeks pregnant right now, and so I am practicing what I preach. And there's a lot of different things that have come up for me in regards to my relationship with my husband, and just talking about it has provided the most relief.
Well, congratulations. It's
Thank
always
you.
exciting to have a new little one coming.
Yes.
So we're cheering you on here.
Thank
And
you.
I mean, so it's really interesting. With your book, you've been there, done that. You've been on both sides, going through pregnancy and then being, the birth doula and helping people educate in regards to, childbirth. Do you feel like women, when they say, "Hey, so I'm going to get an epidural, but I'm kind of afraid because it may paralyze me. I may never walk again after it."
Yeah, this is, one of the biggest fears because, you think about how an epidural is placed, it's placed into fluid in the spine, and that can sound really, really scary to women, and I understand. The first thing that I say though is that it is so rare. The chances of it actually causing paralysis is very, very low. But and to remember too that anesthesiologists, they have an incredible amount of training. They know what they're doing. But I always tell women, it's like, look, if you're afraid of that risk, but you're sure that you do want to get an epidural, have that conversation with the anesthesiologist beforehand. I've had doctors that can even set up phone calls with a pregnant woman and one of the anesthesiologists at the hospital where she'll be delivering, to ask her questions, to say, what are the chances of paralysis? What are the signs to look out for? And that's something else that can be important, before the epidural is placed, to ask the anesthesiologist what should this feel like? What should this not feel like? For example, if their leg starts going numb, all of a sudden, like right as the needle is being placed, that's something that they should tell the anesthesiologist. So a good anesthesiologist will give the woman a list of, if you feel this, let me know, and we'll readjust. But above all, knowing that, again, actually being paralyzed from an epidural is so rare. You might get a headache, you might start shaking. There's common symptoms of an epidural, but luckily paralysis is not one of them.
Well, that's good to hear because it sounds like, pregnant women have enough on their plate and to worry about that as well.
Yes.
And do you find that, with women that are going through like a natural childbirth, decide they're not going to use any medication, that there's also kind of a lot of fear as they get further along in their pregnancy?
Oh yeah, because we have heard in our culture specifically that childbirth is the most painful thing you'll ever go through. And of course, if you ever see a woman giving birth, on a movie or TV show, she's usually like screaming, and it's so scary, so women that decide, okay, I feel like medication isn't the right choice for me, that does not mean that their fear of the discomfort of the pain goes away. And of course, there's that fear of the unknown. You don't know, if you've never had a baby before, you don't know what it's going to feel like. So yeah, women go into it questioning, well, can I do this? Will the pain be too much for me? And of course, every woman is different. I went into the birth experience with my son knowing that I didn't want medication, but also not knowing if I would be able to manage the discomfort. And I think I did ask for the epidural once or twice, but everybody just kind of ignored me. And I I
Aw.
continued on, and I had a really fast labor, relatively. So there really wasn't time anyways. And I got through it, it was not easy, but yeah, I think women should know that uncertainty, even some anxiety around, can I do this or not without medication is normal. And I really encourage women that, are planning on an unmedicated birth, if they get into a situation during childbirth where they feel like, medication is the right choice. They're not being pressured by anybody else, but they feel like that is the right choice for them, to not feel any shame around it, to not feel like they're not strong or they didn't try hard enough. Sometimes for whatever reason, that pain medication is needed, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I would agree with that. I think every childbirth is different. And so do you find that women typically will have like a plan B if they're going to go natural and then go, well, just in case I want to talk to my doctor about a plan B?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of women don't. And I encourage the women that take my classes to have that plan B. It's one of the first things I say in my classes. It's like, look, a lot of people take this class, wanting to have an unmedicated birth. And this will totally prepare you for that. But I want you to know that if you need a plan B, if things change, that's okay. And so I work with women on developing that plan B. Like, okay, let's say that you need to be induced, for example. What would you want that to look like? What medication would you feel comfortable with? If you end up needing pain medication, what would you want? Would you want the epidural? Would you want something else? So I really do try to help women look at a lot of the different possibilities without scaring them, of course. So if something comes up, they do have a plan, because it can be really overwhelming during childbirth if suddenly, your blood pressure is spiking and the doctor is saying, well, I think an epidural would actually help with this, but you hadn't been planning on an epidural. And so, yeah, I think a plan B is a really great option. And one thing I would say is that having a plan B does not mean that you're not dedicated to plan A, that you're not going to do what you can to make that happen. But if that plan needs to be changed, that is okay. That sometimes is just the nature of childbirth. It is unexpected.
Yeah, you don't really know what you're going in for. I don't think
Exactly.
anyone does, because you can go in and say, hey, well, I'm going to have a natural birth and end up being in labor for like 2 days.
Exactly. Yes.
Ooh, that would be a little rough. Well, and a lot of times you hear like when women are in their pregnancy, they're kind of concerned about noise around them. Is that something that they need to factor in, like if there are arguments or in their loud environment?
Oh, yeah. And this can especially be an issue in the hospital because, out in the hallway, sometimes people are talking really loud and, maybe you've gotten into the zone, you're meditating, and then all of a sudden you hear somebody out in the hallway saying who knows what, or even in the room, maybe the doctor and the nurse are having this loud conversation about something that has nothing to do with you. So yeah, there can be all sorts of conversations, noises that can take you out of that, quote unquote zone, so I encourage women to do two things. Bring earplugs to the birth, especially if you will be in the hospital. If you just don't want any sound, you can pop in those earplugs. And then to also have, a few playlists on your phone, some guided meditations that you can listen to, and bring some earbuds so you can have that private listening experience. You can just block out all of the noise around you, because even a home birth, there's just going to be noises that distract you. So having some strategies to block all that out can be really helpful.
So what if someone has a friend that just can't get pregnant? They've been trying. How does someone share their pregnancy with them?
Great question. Yeah, this is something that I've experienced from both sides. It took me a really long time to get pregnant with this baby that I'm currently pregnant with. I had a miscarriage, about 8 months before getting pregnant. So I So I've been on both sides. And how to share that news. You have to be really, really gentle. And you really have to take kind of your own emotional needs out of it, because when you're pregnant, you are in this beautiful, joyful space. That thing that you wanted to happen has happened. You are there. But the woman that you're telling, she is still struggling with it. You have the one thing that she wants most in the world. So I really encourage telling her in a very gentle way and letting her know up front that, like, look, I'm going to tell you this news, but I do not need you to feel overjoyed. Like, I totally understand if this is triggering, if this even makes you somewhat angry, to just give her the space to feel however she needs to feel, to give her permission to not have to fake excitement. And sometimes, genuinely the person you're telling will be excited for you, but she also needs permission to be sad, to maybe feel a little bit of jealousy or resentment, because that is normal. And above all, to not take it personally. If that loved one that you're telling isn't overjoyed by your news, it's not because she doesn't want you to have a healthy pregnancy. It just means that she so badly wishes that she could also be there with you. So yeah, to just be really, really gentle and understanding about her emotions.
That it's still okay to tell them, and you just have to be very mindful in the way that you do it.
Yes. You definitely don't want to keep it from them. That's the other thing. You don't want to tell everybody else, but then just postpone telling that friend. Because again, in the day of social media, and again, people talk, people share happy news. So it's much better if it comes from you in a gentle, loving way.
What do you think women in general are just so afraid to ask these type of questions, or so, get to a place of such shame to even ask these questions? Because a lot of this would seem like it's kind of, I wouldn't say common sense, but when you're going through that entire process, I'm sure all these questions come up.
Yeah, so it's two parts. Like I mentioned before, our culture has made certain topics taboo, so anything, really related to sexuality and pregnancy can feel really taboo. But on top of that, a lot of the questions that, we feel embarrassed about or shame around, they're the questions that make us really examine, our emotional landscape, what, like, things about our body that might make us really embarrassed. So it really makes us do a deep dive into who we are, into the challenges that we face. And that can feel really overwhelming. That can feel really scary to take this honest look at who we are, which is why with a lot of these questions, women don't even, and I'm speaking from experience, don't even realize that they have the questions until they read them. For me, when I was writing this book, there was a lot of questions. I thought, oh, well, that wasn't really something that was a concern for me. But then when I started to get into it, I realized, oh my gosh, yeah, this was a concern I had, but I was just too embarrassed to even admit it to myself. So it can trigger a lot that I think, and I think it can be a really beautiful opportunity to get to know ourselves on a deeper level, but it's a lot of work to really dive into all this stuff. So I was hoping that the book could serve as a bit of a guide. It's like, here's where to start with exploring all of these strange, wonderful, challenging topics.
Well, it makes it a perfect gift for a friend who's pregnant, because I'm reading through this and it's like, gosh, all these seem like they would be questions people would want answers to.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's certainly the hope.
Do you find that there's any hesitation when pregnant women are in labor and they're in the delivery room about having their partner in there as well?
Sometimes, yeah, that can be a big thing, because every partner, processes the birthing experience different, because you are seeing this woman that you love go through a really intense experience. And even though, the pain, the discomfort is normal, it's supposed to be there, that can be really scary for partners. If you are in the hospital, some partners have a lot of fears about the hospital. I had a dad that passed out when his wife had to have some blood drawn during her birthing experience, so if you have a partner that has a lot of anxiety coming up during the birth experience, the birthing woman is going to feel that energy. So every now and then it's intense enough where, and I work with couples on this, on deciding if, having that partner in the room during the birth is the best option. A lot of times it is. And we find strategies to help to make sure that the partner is okay and staying calm. And, doulas are really great at that. We help the partner almost as much as the mom. But every now and then, again, if the partner really feels like, I don't think I can, put my anxiety to the side, I think that I will really freak out, then in that situation, it might be best for them to wait until the baby is born to come into the room.
Yeah, in case you have people passing out, right?
Yeah, exactly. The woman is the one that needs the attention, not the partner who doesn't like blood.
Yeah, who just passed out, they're having to triage that person now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I know your book is filled with so many great tips. What would you want our listeners to take away from this book?
Yes. So number one is know that nothing that you feel or think during pregnancy, during childbirth, during early motherhood makes you like abnormal or bad. This is a really wild, unexpected journey. And just know that whatever comes up for you is normal and you can navigate it. It doesn't mean that you're a bad, weird person or anything like that.
Well, that's good to know because no one wants to be a bad or weird person, especially when you're having kids.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so much going on and, the hormones are raging. A lot of times, when someone's pregnant, I understand that they really just can't really stand to be around anyone, including their partner, So.
Oh yeah. All of that is so normal.
Well, that's good to know. My goodness, Bailey. I mean, we could talk forever. I love your books. Where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your work, and be part of your community?
Yeah, so the best place is on my website, baileygaddis.com. That has links to, all the books, my blog, social media. You can email me directly from there. So that's, the best place to start.
Well, Bailey, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Bailey. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Asking for a Pregnant Friend. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.